I was standing in the hallway outside my own kitchen, sock feet on cold tile, holding a glass of water I'd never drink. Through the crack in the door, I heard my wife say, "He's not going to find out. We just keep it between us." And then my stepdaughter laughed, this low, conspiratorial laugh, and said, "He's too trusting. That's always been his problem." My hand started shaking so bad the water spilled down my wrist. I didn't move. I overheard my wife and stepdaughter whispering about what they'd done, and I knew I had to act fast. My name's Brennan Keel. I'm 44 years old, and for most of my adult life I thought I understood what a family was supposed to look like. I grew up outside a small town, raised by a single mom who worked double shifts at a textile plant. She never complained, never asked for help, and never let me see her cry. I think I inherited that from her. This stubborn belief that if you just keep showing up, things will eventually be okay. I married my first wife, Tessa, when I was 23. We were young, dumb, completely unprepared. We had our son, Callum, a year later. For a while, things were good. Tessa was funny and sharp, and she could make anyone in a room feel like the most important person alive. But somewhere around year 5, we stopped talking to each other. Not in the dramatic, slamming doors way. We just ran out of things to say. The divorce was quiet. We split custody of Callum, sold our little house, and went our separate ways. I spent the next several years just being a dad. Callum was my whole world. Every other week he'd come stay with me, and we had our routines. Pancakes on Saturday mornings, horror movies he was probably too young for on Friday nights, fishing at the reservoir on Sundays when the weather was right. He was a sweet kid, thoughtful. He used to leave little drawings on my nightstand before he went back to his mom's. I met Danielle when Callum was 11. She came into the hardware store where I was working as a manager and asked me if I knew the difference between a Phillips head and a flathead. I laughed. She laughed. She told me later she already knew the difference. She'd just wanted an excuse to talk to me. Danielle had a daughter, Macy, who was 9 at the time. Macy was this tiny, serious-faced kid who barely spoke above a whisper for the first 6 months I knew her. She'd sit at the dinner table and just watch me, like she was trying to figure out if I was safe. Her eyes would track me whenever I moved around the kitchen, and if I got too close too fast, she'd flinch. Just slightly. Just enough for me to notice. I didn't push her. I didn't ask Danielle what had happened before me. I just let Macy come to me on her own terms. And eventually, slowly, she did. "Brennan," she said one night, tugging on my sleeve while I was doing dishes. "Can you help me with my math homework? Mom doesn't get fractions." I dried my hands and sat down with her at the kitchen table. We spent an hour on fractions. By the end, she was smiling. Danielle and I got married after 2 years of dating. It was a small ceremony, just us, the kids, and a few close friends. Callum stood beside me as my best man. He was 13, gangly, already taller than Danielle. He shook my hand afterward and said, "Good job, Dad. She's cool." Macy hugged me that night and whispered, "Is it okay if I call you Dad sometimes?" I almost lost it right there. Yeah, kiddo, that's more than okay. Sometimes I think about how willingly I opened my heart during that period, how completely I trusted that love was enough to hold everything together. I didn't realize yet that trust without vigilance is just another word for blindness. The first few years of our blended family were genuinely wonderful. Danielle was warm, affectionate, always planning weekend trips and family dinners. Callum and Macy got along well. He was protective of her in that older brother way, and she adored him. I felt like I'd finally built the life I'd always wanted. But things started to shift when Callum turned 16. He was pulling away from me, which I understood, that's what teenagers do, but it wasn't just the normal distance. He started making excuses to skip his weeks at my house. He'd text instead of call. When he did come over, he spent most of his time in his room. "He's 16, Brennan," Danielle said when I brought it up. "Let him breathe." "I know, but it feels different, like he's avoiding me." "You're overthinking it." I wanted to believe her, so I did. Around the same time, Macy was changing too. She was 14 now, and the quiet, thoughtful kid I'd known was becoming someone sharper, more guarded. She and Danielle had this new dynamic. They'd go shopping together, whisper in the kitchen, stop talking when I walked in. I told myself it was just a mother-daughter thing. Girls need that bond. I didn't want to be the kind of stepfather who felt threatened by it. But then the money started disappearing. I noticed it first as small things. A charge at a restaurant I didn't recognize. A withdrawal from our joint savings that Danielle said was for Macy's school supplies. 50 here, 80 there. I didn't question it at first. We both had access to the accounts. I trusted her. Then I found a credit card statement I'd never seen before. It was in Danielle's name, opened without my knowledge, with a balance of nearly $9,000. Clothes, electronics, a weekend stay at some resort I'd never heard of. "Danielle, what is this?" She barely looked up from her phone. "It's nothing. I opened it for emergencies." $9,000 in emergencies? "Don't start, Brennan. I'll pay it off." "With what? We have a budget. We agreed." "I said I'll handle it." She walked out of the room. That was the end of the conversation. Looking back now, I can trace exactly how the erosion started. Not with one betrayal, but with dozens of tiny dismissals, each one teaching me that my concerns didn't matter enough to address. I tried to talk to Callum about what was going on at home, but he was distant. The last time he came for his weekend, he sat across from me at breakfast and said, "Dad, can I ask you something?" "Anything." "Why do you let people walk all over you?" It hit me like a punch. "What do you mean?" "I mean Danielle and Macy. They treat you like you're just there, like you're furniture." "That's not. I've watched it, Dad. Every time I come over, they talk to you like you're an employee, and you just take it." "Callum, that's not fair. Danielle and I are working through some stuff, but whatever, Dad." He pushed his plate away. "I'm just tired of watching it." He went back to his mom's that afternoon. Didn't come back for 3 weeks. I threw myself into work. Got promoted to regional operations at the hardware chain. Longer hours, more responsibility, a decent raise. I thought if I could provide more, fix the financial strain, things would settle down. Danielle seemed pleased with the raise, but uninterested in actually adjusting our spending. Macy, now 15, was asking for things constantly. New phone, new laptop, concert tickets, name brand everything. Danielle always said yes before I could weigh in. "We can't keep spending like this," I said one evening. Macy rolled her eyes. "It's not even that much." "Macy, a $700 phone is—" "Mom already said yes." I looked at Danielle. She shrugged. "She needs it for school." "She has a phone. It works fine." "Brennan, just let it go." That phrase, "just let it go," became the soundtrack of my marriage. Every concern I raised, every boundary I tried to set, got met with that same dismissal. And slowly, without realizing it, I stopped raising concerns at all. I started keeping a separate savings account. Not a lot, just a few hundred a month, automatically transferred from my paycheck before it hit our joint account. I didn't tell Danielle. I'm not proud of that, but something in me knew I needed a safety net. Some quiet voice that had been whispering for months finally got loud enough to hear. It was a Wednesday night in March when everything came apart. I'd come home early from work. A meeting had been canceled. The house was dim. I could hear voices from the kitchen, low and urgent. I slipped off my shoes out of habit and padded down the hallway. That's when I heard them. Danielle's voice first. "The account is almost drained. He hasn't noticed yet, but he will soon." Then Macy. "So we move the rest before he checks. You said he never looks at the retirement stuff." "He doesn't. But we need to be careful. If he finds out before we're ready—" "He's not going to find out. We just keep it between us." "Macy, I'm serious. If this goes wrong—" "Mom, relax. He's too trusting. That's always been his problem." I stood there with water dripping down my hand, my pulse hammering in my ears. They weren't talking about a surprise party. They weren't planning a birthday gift. They were talking about my retirement account, the one I'd been building for 20 years, long before Danielle ever entered my life. I didn't confront them that night. I went to bed, lay perfectly still next to Danielle, and stared at the ceiling until dawn. Every instinct told me to explode, to wake her up and demand answers. But Callum's voice kept echoing in my head. "Why do you let people walk all over you?" This time, I wasn't going to let it happen. But I wasn't going to be reckless either. There's a kind of clarity that arrives only when you've been quietly devastated, when the shock wears off and all that's left is the cold, practical question of what to do next. The next morning, I called in sick to work. As soon as Danielle left and Macy went to school, I started pulling records. Bank statements, credit card bills, the retirement account login I hadn't checked in months. They'd already moved $32,000. I sat at my desk and felt the room tilt. $32,000, transferred in small increments over the past year into an account in Danielle's name only. An account I didn't know existed. The transfers were clever, never more than a few thousand at a time, spaced out irregularly so they wouldn't trigger any alerts. Some were disguised as payments to vendors that didn't exist. Others were simply labeled miscellaneous. The credit card debt, the cash withdrawals, the constant spending, it was all connected. It was all part of a deliberate, calculated effort to drain me. She'd been siphoning our finances for over a year, and Macy had been helping her hide it. I called a lawyer that afternoon. His name was Gerald, a calm, methodical man who'd seen every kind of divorce case imaginable. I sat in his office and laid everything out. The overheard conversation, the financial records, the secret account. Gerald leaned back in his chair. "You have a strong case, Brennan. This is financial fraud within a marriage. We can pursue recovery of those funds." "What about the house?" "Yours. You bought it before the marriage, and it's in your name." "And Macy?" "She's a minor. Her involvement complicates things for Danielle, not for you." I spent the next 2 weeks building my case in silence. I moved my remaining assets into protected accounts. I documented everything, every statement, every transfer date, every dollar. I photographed the credit card bills and emailed copies to Gerald. I went to work, came home, smiled at Danielle across the dinner table, and said nothing. Some nights she'd reach for my hand on the couch and I'd let her take it, knowing what those hands had done to our future. It was the hardest performance of my life. There were moments I nearly broke. Once, when Macy asked me to help her with a college essay about someone who inspires you. She'd written about me. I read the whole thing, told her it was great, and then went to the bathroom and gripped the sink until my knuckles turned white. Callum came for a visit during that period. He could tell something was different. "You okay, Dad? You seem focused." "I'm handling something." "Something with Danielle?" "Yeah." He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Good." The day I told Danielle I was filing for divorce, she was in the living room, scrolling through her phone. Macy was upstairs. "We need to talk," I said. "About what?" I set the folder on the coffee table. Bank records, transfer receipts, the secret account statements, everything. "About this." She stared at the folder, didn't open it. Her face went through about 5 different expressions in 3 seconds. Then she said, "Where did you get all this?" "It doesn't matter. I know what you did. I know what both of you did." "Brennan, you don't understand. I understand perfectly. You stole from me, systematically, for over a year, and you had your daughter help you cover it up." "I was going to pay it back." $32,000? From where?" She didn't answer. Macy appeared at the top of the stairs. "What's going on?" "Your mother and I are getting divorced," I said. I kept my voice even. "And I've already spoken to a lawyer about the money." Macy's face went white. She looked at Danielle. "Mom?" Danielle just shook her head. I didn't yell. I didn't slam anything. I picked up the folder and walked out of the room. Behind me, I heard Macy start to cry, and Danielle saying, "I told you this would happen. I told you." The divorce took 4 months. Gerald was thorough. The court ordered full restitution of the stolen funds. Danielle's secret account was frozen. She lost the house. My house. And had to move in with her sister. Macy went with her. I never heard from either of them again. I'd be lying if I said that didn't hurt. Despite everything, I'd loved Macy. I'd helped her with fractions. I'd read her bedtime stories. I'd been her dad for 6 years. But she'd looked me in the eye across that dinner table for months, knowing what her mother was doing, helping her do it, and never said a word. The months after the divorce were lonely. The house felt enormous. I'd catch myself setting 3 plates for dinner, then putting one back, then putting another back. Just me. I'd walk past Macy's old room and see the empty shelves where her books used to be. The wall still had tape marks from where she'd hung her drawings. I left them there for weeks before I finally peeled them off. Some nights I'd sit on the back porch with a beer and just listen to the neighborhood sounds. Dogs barking, sprinklers clicking on, someone's television bleeding through an open window. I kept replaying that hallway moment in my head. The water on my wrist. Macy's laugh. I kept wondering if there were signs earlier that I should have caught. There were. Of course there were. I just hadn't wanted to see them. But Callum came around more. He started spending weekends at my place again. One Saturday morning, he showed up with grocery bags and announced he was making breakfast. "Since when do you cook?" I asked. "Since I watched 12 YouTube videos and decided I'm a chef now." The pancakes were terrible. We ate every one. "Dad," he said, scraping burnt batter off the pan, "I'm sorry I pulled away." "You don't have to apologize for that." "Yeah, I do. I saw what was happening, and instead of being there for you, I just left." "You were a kid, Callum. You handled it the way a kid should." "I'm not a kid anymore." "No, you're not." We stood there in my kitchen, smoke still hanging in the air from his cooking disaster, and something shifted between us. Not back to what it was, to something new. Something built on honesty instead of just habit. I didn't lose everything in one dramatic moment. I lost it slowly. In whispered conversations I wasn't supposed to hear. In charges on statements I wasn't supposed to check. In a daughter who chose complicity over loyalty. But what I found on the other side was something I hadn't expected. I found out that the people who stay, who really stay, are the ones worth building for. I'm doing okay now. I still work the same job. I still live in the same house. Callum's in college, studying engineering, calling me twice a week to complain about his professors. I've started fishing again on Sunday mornings, alone mostly, which is fine. The quiet doesn't scare me anymore. Last week, Callum called and said, "Hey, Dad, I'm bringing someone home for dinner next month. Try not to be weird." "I'm never weird." "You're always weird. That's why I love you." I laughed. For the first time in a long time, it didn't feel forced. So let me ask you something. Have you ever had a moment where you overheard something that completely changed the way you saw someone you loved? How did you handle it? I'd really love to hear your stories in the comments. And if this one hit home for you, go ahead and drop a like and subscribe to the channel. It means more than you know, and I'll catch you in the next one.